Some legends walk into the world like a storm, untamed, unbroken, and unwilling to apologize for the thunder living inside them. But others, like Prince, carry their lightning in silence. And that silence, the kind that glows under the skin, is often more dangerous than any scandal whispered in the tabloids. Have you ever wondered why a man who looked like a dream, played like a devil, and wrote like someone possessed by every ancestor who ever sang before him, still felt hunted by his own truth? Imagine the lights fading, a silhouette with a guitar shaped like a question mark, and a voice that could burn through velvet. To the world, Prince was a magician in lace gloves. But beneath that spectacle lived three truths, three dangerous secrets, so heavy they pressed against his ribs every time he stepped onto a stage. Not the cheap, sensational kind of secrets the world tries to pin on black icons, but the deeper, more human kind. The kind rooted in trauma, in identity, in a world that rewards brilliance but fears the people who carry it, because Prince was never just a man. He was a battlefield, between the sacred and the profane, between the black body and the white gaze, between the industry that wanted to own him and the spirit that refused to be captured. And if you listen closely, you can feel how that tension shaped every note he ever played. For anyone watching from the outside, he looked invincible, untouchable, a flame wrapped in purple silk. But power always demands a price. And in Prince's case, that price was isolation. A loneliness so sharp it could cut through the noise of stadiums. His first dangerous secret was hidden in plain sight. The haunting truth that genius does not protect you from being misunderstood. In fact, it is often the reason you get misunderstood in the first place. Prince's brilliance made him a spectacle. His blackness made him a target. And his refusal to obey made him a threat. In an industry built like a machine, he moved like a myth, too fluid to be categorized, too bold to be controlled. And you, watching from the comfort of your screen, might ask yourself, how much of your own identity have you traded away just to feel accepted? How many pieces of yourself have you given up because someone told you that being too much was dangerous? Prince knew that battle intimately. From the earliest days, his sound didn't just cross boundaries, it shattered them. Funk mixed with rock, gospel kissed pop, soul flirted with electronica. He blurred the lines because he refused to let the world tell him where black art was supposed to belong. And that defiance triggered the first storm. The moment the industry realized they couldn't predict him, couldn't contain him, couldn't own him. But there was another layer to his struggle. Private, invisible, and far more painful. Prince carried the weight of biracial identity, the tension of being too black for one world and not black enough for another. It shaped him quietly, like a bruise beneath the surface. He moved through spaces where black creativity was celebrated but black autonomy was feared. And every time he refused to bow, refused to shrink, refused to be polite, he was reminded that the world loved his art, but not always the man who made it. That became his second dangerous secret. The truth that fame is a cage disguised as a kingdom. And the higher you rise, the more walls appear. Prince learned early that in order to survive, he had to become fluent in contradictions. Soft, yet sharp, holy yet sexual, gentle yet defiant, and each contradiction carved him into something unrepeatable. You might feel a piece of that in your own life, the pressure to wear masks, to be palatable, to be extraordinary without ever becoming threatening. But Prince refused that game. He'd rather be misunderstood than manipulated, rather be mythologized than controlled. Yet the most dangerous secret of all, the one that nearly tore him apart, was his fight for ownership, his name, his masters, his identity on paper, not just on stage. When he stood before the world and declared himself a symbol, many mocked him, called him eccentric, called him dramatic. But the truth was sharper. It was the story of a black artist demanding sovereignty in an industry that profits from stripping it away. His transformation wasn't rebellion, it was resurrection. A man reclaiming what the world stole from generations before him. Musicians who died broke innovators who never saw a dime. Icons erased from history because they refused to sign their names in someone else's ink. And here you are listening to this story, maybe unaware that every time Prince wrote, played, or performed, he was fighting a system older and darker than the spotlight ever revealed. A system built on exploitation, on silence, on obedience, Prince refused all three, and that refusal made him dangerous. But his greatest battle was still ahead, and it was a battle not against the industry, not against identity, not even against faith, but against the force that nearly every Black legend must eventually confront: the price of being irreplaceable. The final danger a secret Prince carried was the one the world sensed but never fully understood: the truth about his body, his limits, and the silent war he fought to outrun his own mortality. Not because he feared death in the way most people do, but because he feared something far more terrifying: becoming ordinary, becoming predictable, becoming just another name the industry could replace when it found the next glittering miracle. In the quiet corridors of his later years, pain walked beside him like a shadow he refused to acknowledge. A lifetime of performing, the splits, the heels, the stage acrobatics, the countless nights he pushed his body beyond reason, had left scars no glamour could conceal. People saw magic on stage. They never saw the cost when the lights went out. And like too many Black icons before him, he was taught to push, to endure, to outshine the pain until the body surrendered. To a world that worships perfection, admitting vulnerability can feel like treason. And Prince, raised in an industry where Black artists were expected to be superhuman just to survive, fought that battle silently. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the emotional exhaustion of supporting a myth too heavy for any one person to carry. Because once the world crowns a legend, it forgets that legend is made of flesh, not marble. You might understand that feeling, the pressure to keep functioning, keep performing, keep being strong even when your spirit is begging for rest. The world celebrates your brilliance but ignores your bruises. Prince felt that every day. And so he hid his fragility with the same mastery he used to hide messages in his music. He built an aura so exquisite that people forgot he was human at all. But the body, unlike the legend, cannot live forever in the purple glow of myth. And as the years pressed on, that secret, the truth about his limits, became the most dangerous of all. Because in the silence of his pain, he turned not to rest, but to work. He recorded more. He performed more. He created more. His studio became a temple and a trap, a place where he could escape the weight of his humanity. For a few precious hours, creation became his medicine, his shield, his disguise. Yet that relentless cycle brought him into collision with a darker reality: the quiet dependence on medication to keep the machine running. Not addiction in the sensational way tabloids frame it, but survival, the desperate attempt to maintain the pace the world demanded from him. He wasn't chasing a high. He was chasing the ability to stand, to move, to be the Prince the world expected, the Prince the world adored, the Prince the world refused to let rest. And this unspoken truth became his final battlefield. Not because he was reckless, but because he was human. In a world that punished legends for acting human, Black icons are rarely given the grace to falter, the space to heal, the freedom to step back. Instead, they are pushed onto pedestals so high that the fall becomes inevitable. Prince tried to defy that gravity. For years, he succeeded. But the weight, the pain, the pressure, the expectations, they all converged quietly, invisibly. And when he could no longer hold the myth together, the world acted shocked. As if brilliance guarantees immortality, as if talent exempts you from suffering, as if legends don't break. But breaking is human. And Prince, despite the diamond brilliance of his spirit, was human to the very end. What remains, long after the rumors, the speculation, the headlines fade, is the truth that Prince's life was not defined by scandal, but by resistance against an industry that tried to own him, resistance against stereotypes that tried to shrink him, resistance against spiritual storms that tried to swallow him, resistance against a body that couldn't always match the speed of his genius. His secrets were not shameful. They were proof of how fiercely he fought to protect his identity, his autonomy, his creativity, his soul. And through every battle, every contradiction, every revelation, he carved out a legacy that refuses to be diminished. Because Prince was more than a musician, he was a mirror reflecting the complexity of Black genius, a rebel who reshaped the boundaries of art, gender, race, and desire, a man who dared to be everything the world told him he couldn't be. And in doing so, he exposed not only his own struggles, but the world's. Fame did not create him. Fear did not break him. Secrets did not define him. What defined him was the courage to keep evolving, even when the world demanded he stay the same. And long after the purple glow fades from the sky, one truth remains. Prince's world was an arena where brilliance met brutality, where every note he struck carried both beauty and blood. And as the years unfolded, the pressure around him tightened like a velvet noose. Because when a black icon refuses to be tamed, refuses to be grateful for the crumbs of freedom the industry tosses his way, the world begins to whisper. And whispers become rumors, and rumors become weapons. That was the atmosphere Prince breathed in, a place where genius didn't grant safety, only higher stakes. The second dangerous secret, the one Prince guarded like a sacred artifact, was the truth about his spiritual battle. Not the kind written in tabloids, but the internal journey between salvation and seduction, between creation and destruction. Behind the pyrotechnics and the sensuality lived a man who felt the weight of divine purpose pressing against his chest. He carried music like scripture. He saw performance as prophecy, and yet he was constantly pulled between two worlds, the flesh and the spirit, the stage and the sanctuary. People wanted to reduce him to a symbol of erotic glamour. And yes, he moved with a sensuality that could melt steel. But what the world often failed to understand was that Prince's sensuality was not rebellion. It was testimony, a declaration that the black body is sacred, powerful, and deserving of beauty. But as he grew older, the stage lights that once felt like liberation began to feel like interrogation. And you, sitting here listening, might understand the feeling. We'll say a name. The moment when something that once gave you life begins to drain it away. Prince's conversion to the Jehovah's Witness faith was not simply a religious shift. It was a psychological turning point. It was the quiet scream of a man trying to anchor himself before he drowned in his own legend. Fame had become a mirror, reflecting too many versions of him. Some real, some invented, some demanded. Religion became the only place where he felt he could return to a single truth. But even that journey became a paradox, because the world does not allow legends to evolve. Once it imagines you, it expects you to stay frozen inside the fantasy, and you've seen it happen. How the public treats black icons like eternal artifacts, not human beings capable of transformation. People wanted the Purple Rain Prince forever, not the man who wanted to sit in living rooms discussing scripture, or the artist who once stood half-naked on stage now knocking gently on doors to talk about faith. His growth felt like betrayal to fans who saw him as their escape, their fantasy, their escape hatch from conformity. But the deepest fracture, the one he never fully repaired, was the clash between his desire for purity and the chaos of fame. He carried guilt like a shadow, constantly questioning whether the art that liberated millions was slowly consuming his soul. And this internal war made him increasingly private, increasingly controlled, increasingly isolated. Even his closest collaborators said he moved through the world like a ghost wrapped in purple silk, present yet unreachable. Yet beneath all of this lived his most dangerous secret, the fear that if he ever stopped creating, he would disappear. Not just from the charts or the headlines, but from existence itself, creation for Prince wasn't a career. It was survival. Art was the only place where he could breathe without judgment, without compromise, without the noise of a world that demanded, and never gave back enough. That fear pushed him into cycles of obsession, sleeplessness, perfectionism so intense it bordered on punishment. He became the architect of his own exile, building worlds so breathtaking that he rarely had time to live inside them. And you might recognize that pattern, the pressure to keep producing, to keep performing, to keep proving you deserve the space you occupy. It's the burden that clings to every black creative who dares to dream loudly in a world that keeps trying to turn down the volume. Prince's work ethic was legendary, but legends are often built on quiet suffering. He recorded alone for days. He wrote with a precision that felt like surgery. He demanded excellence because he knew the world judged him by a harsher standard. He couldn't be good. He had to be miraculous. And as he reached deeper into that vortex, the shadows around him grew sharper. Because the more he pushed himself, the harder it became to distinguish between dedication and self-destruction. He became a man consumed by the very fire that made him extraordinary. People saw the glamour, not the cost. They saw the lace, the guitars, the flawless performances, not the loneliness, the sleepless nights, the weight of carrying a cultural empire on his shoulders. They saw the icon, not the man quietly drowning inside the myth the world built around him. Legends may fall, but their truth always rises.